Welcome to the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast, powered by StatRoute.com. And now, here's your host, Ryan Skullroot.
Hello and welcome to a somewhat special edition of the SkullKing Fantasy Football Podcast. We are actually doing a midweek show where we're going through a mock draft. So not covering really any news or notes, really just kind of going through a mock draft to kind of see where things are at, how they lay out, and just to kind of give some of my thoughts and pointers when it comes to drafting your fantasy teams. So why don't we go ahead and hop into the draft. I'm doing this on FantasyPros.com on their mock draft simulator. It's the easiest way for me to do a single person mock draft. And so that's where I'm going through this. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up a half-point PPR 12-team draft, snake draft. I will be in the 4th position. And if you're watching on the video, you can actually see this. I actually have the page up, and so that you can see and follow along on the screen where I'm going with it. So, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex positions, defense, kicker, and 5 bench positions. I may not go through the whole thing. I may just get to a point and be to the point at that point where it's like, at this point you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go. I may go through the whole thing. Let's kind of see how the time plays out. So why don't we go ahead? Who I will be drafting against is the Fantasy Football's expert consensus rankings, which I am actually a part of. So I'm semi-drafting against myself, and I'm going to take off. Well, shoot. Okay, and apparently I'm going to be drafting also against the average draft, the composite ADPs from Yahoo Fantrax and Fantasy Football Calculator. So let's go ahead and start the draft. All right, so the first 4 off the board, or first 3 off the board, Saquon, then Ezekiel, then Christian McCaffrey. This is kind of a no-brainer here to take Alvin Kamara. He is really, these top 4 running backs are kind of 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. So any of these 4 could be taken as the number 1 overall, and I would have no qualms with. So I'm going to go ahead and take Alvin Kamara. Now, sometimes there are people who go by a specific draft strategy. There's only a certain way that they want to draft. And what I am doing is I'm actually writing up some articles on those specific draft strategies, whether it's 0 wide receiver or 0 RB, and kind of my thoughts on those and where you can take them. So be watching for those. In this case right here, that's the only way I can go from there. Okay. So we've got, after I took Alvin Kamara, I went David Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Devontae Adams, Joe Mixon, Julio Jones, and then in the 2nd round, Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown, Todd Gurley, Odell Beckham Jr., and Tyreek Hill. And so the next up in terms of people available, there's something about the way that the expert consensus and everything sets up and the way they suggest players. I'm going to do it by overall rankings. There. And so according to overall rankings, Dalvin Cook is the next pick. Being a half-point PPR, I really like Mike Evans for this next year. I'm not completely confident in Dalvin Cook. Say what you want about that. I like the wide receivers, especially in a half-point PPR. Just the boost that you get there. I think Dalvin Cook could possibly get pushed a little bit by Madison behind him. And they've got phenomenal wide receivers. So they say they want to lean. Minnesota says they want to lean on the run game. I have yet to believe that. Since the last couple times they tried leaning on the run game, they eventually found themselves passing again. So while the experts say to go Dalvin Cook, I don't have him quite as high in my rankings, so I will be going Mike Evans. And I know people are going to call me crazy for this, which is fine. everyone has their own way to draft. There is no, there's no one way to draft a team. There's no, this is how you have to draft. This is the kind of players that you need. It works out and it doesn't work out. It's going to go all directions with these. So for those of you who are saying, well, you're an idiot for taking him, well, you know what? It's all personal preference, and you won't find out who the right person is until the end of the season, after the season's over. So here we go. So our next pickup is, it has best available as George Kittle, Damian Williams, T.Y. Hilton, and Amari Cooper. Now, George Kittle right now in the expert consensus is the number 2 tight end above Zach Ertz. If you've listened to this podcast at all, I am not as high on George Kittle as everyone else is. I have him down in the tight end 5 or 6 range. And the reason for that is everything went right for him last year. Most of the running backs got injured. Most of the wide receivers got injured. He had 30% of the target share with Nate Mullins as the quarterback, and only about 14 to 17% of the target share in all the time that Jimmy Garoppolo has been the quarterback. So put on top of that 64% of his yards came after the catch, when most tight ends and wide receivers are getting about 40 to 45% of the yards after the catch. Those are unsustainable numbers. And so I am not taking George Kittle. So looking at who's available: Damian Williams, Kerryon Johnson, T.Y. Hilton, Amari Cooper. Personally, for me, I am more in the T.Y. Hilton track here. I have my concerns about Damian Williams. And so I know that it's going to be a while before I pick. It's going to be about 16 spots before I pick again. But I like T.Y. Hilton. While he's not as high, he's a good half-point PPR guy, because while he's not as high a receptions guy, he is a big total yards guy. As of right now, I'm not completely concerned about Andrew Luck and his leg. Give me another couple weeks and we kind of see where Andrew Luck's calf muscle is and whether or not he's going to be ready for week 1. Then I may start knocking T.Y. Hilton down in my rankings, but for right now, that's not a concern for me. So I'm actually going to draft T.Y. Hilton. So now my starting team so far is running back, I've got Alvin Kamara, wide receiver Mike Evans, and wide receiver T.Y. Hilton. All right. So from here, after I took T.Y. Hilton, went Damian Williams, Devonta Foreman, George Kittle, Kerryon Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Josh Jacobs, Amari Cooper, Aaron Jones, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, David Montgomery at the 4-3. I really like David Montgomery. If I have a late pick in a 12-team draft, I may be taking him in the fourth round also. And honestly, if he was still available at this point, he would be my next pick. But Stephon Diggs, Julian Edelman, AJ Green, Brandon Cooks, and Kenny Golladay. So what we have left right now in terms of overall, you can see on the screen if you're following on the video. Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, Alshon Jeffrey, O.J. Howard. Still, the only quarterback so far taken is Patrick Mahomes, who was taken at the end of the second round. And so, in terms of running backs right now, Chris Carson, Mark Ingram, Sonny Michel, Phillip Lindsay. Wide receivers, Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp. And right now, I'm kind of at a crossroads with who I would want to take, because it's kind of a run on wide receivers. I like Chris Godwin. However, I already have Mike Evans. I like Cooper Kupp. I think that he can bounce back. As of right now, all reports we have seen is that he is good to go for the season. And so right now, I almost feel like I would want to. I do like Chris Carson for this year. all reports out of Seattle are that he is still the number 1 back, and he is keeping Rashad Penny to the number 2 role. So for me, of these top 4, I like Kupp and Carson. Which one do I like better? If I look at what I could get later on in terms of wide receivers, because after I pick, it's going to be about, six more picks, and then it'll be my pick again. I would rather have Chris Carson miss out on Cooper Kupp because I think there are better options in wide receiver coming up than there are necessarily in running back. And so I'm going to draft Chris Carson here. And we'll see what happens. And, of course, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Sonny Michel, Calvin Ridley. So what's left here is, as far as running backs go, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, James White, who is a solid PPR style running back. Tyler Lockett, in terms of wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore. There's some good value there in the wide receiver position. I am still holding off on quarterback. There's so much value quarterback. There's still Patrick Mahomes is the only quarterback who's been taken so far. So we still have Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck. And so until some of those start getting taken off the board, I'm still going to wait. I think there's still plenty of value in the quarterback position to wait on. So I'm not too anxious to go jumping off and getting a quarterback yet. Or even tight end. There's still a lot of value left there as well. So in terms of running backs, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, James White, I have Kamara, Carson, Evans, and Hilton. After I took Carson, Godwin, Kupp, Mike Williams, Allen Robinson, Sonny Michel, and Calvin Ridley were taken. So again, Lockett, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore. I like Tyler Lockett to have a solid year this year. He's not as PPR necessary. He doesn't get a high amount of targets. He is going to get an increase in targets this year with Doug Baldwin officially being gone. He will be the number 1 guy. So I like Tyler Lockett here. You know, you call me a homer and see all my Seahawks stuff. But he is the number 1. They're going to line him up in the slot more. He is going to have mismatches against slot corners and even at times linebackers. So he is definitely a guy that I have a mind to be watching. And so Mark Ingram's kind of been dropping a little bit. I'm going to go Tyler Lockett here to fill one of my flex positions. I think that Tyler Lockett will be a solid flex. So, and apparently the experts agree that he would be the next person to take. So, all right. So after I took Tyler Lockett, Phillip Lindsay, DJ Moore, Kenyon Drake, Tyler Boyd, Tariq Cohen, Robbie Anderson, O.J. Howard, Alshon Jeffrey, Mark Ingram, Jarvis Landry, Evan Ingram, Andrew Luck. See, then we start getting the quarterbacks taken. Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson, Dante Pettis, Jared Cook, and Aaron Rodgers. So in terms of quarterbacks, we still have tons of value here in the quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, all still on the board. Now in terms of running backs, we've got James White, Lamar Miller, Tevin Coleman. Basically, the backups are handcuffs to the 2 guys that I have so far, in Latavius Murray and Rashad Penny. Wide receiver, Sammy Watkins, Corey Davis, Christian Kirk, Will Fuller, guys that I don't mind, to be honest. However, I'm not exactly high on. I don't see as much upside. I see a little more upside for me in terms of where they're being taken, a little bit farther down in the order. So, for me, I think I'm more likely to look at running back here. I like James White. Sammy Watkins is getting it. You know, everyone's all over Sammy Watkins in that offense. I am not so sure what to do about that, to be completely honest. I'm not high on Sammy Watkins. I have a hard time believing that he can stay healthy. Like James White. James White's shooting up draft boards a little bit. Lamar Miller should be moving up draft boards with the fact that in the fact that, you know, Deonta Foreman just got moved or waived and is now with the Colts. So for me, I almost want to go with James White. The problem is they can be a little unpredictable in terms of what to do with the New England running back situation. They've been talking about the fact they've been getting Sonny Michel more into the pass game. Plus, they've also got Damian Harris, so there's a lot of question marks there. Not really big on Lamar Miller. If I'm looking at a flex right now, I'd probably go with James White. I think he has a pretty established role, and so he's the guy that I would rather go with. So I'm going to take James White. After taking James White, Sammy Watkins, Corey Davis, Will Fuller, Christian Kirk, Darius Geis, and Hunter Henry all went. So this provides a little more clarity for me in terms of what is left. Marvin Jones, Curtis Samuel, Sterling Shepard, D.D. Westbrook at wide receiver, Lamar Miller, Tevin Coleman, Rashad. So we still got basically the same running backs that were there. And then at quarterback, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson. So right now, we don't know what to do about Melvin Gordon. And that the reason I mention that is because Austin Eckler is sitting there. He could possibly make it around another round to us. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. Possibly. There's other upside, running backs down the list. In terms of wide receivers, I like Marvin Jones. I think that he will be solid. His problem is, staying healthy. I like D.D. Westbrook. I think that he is a possible sleeper for this year. I think that he is probably the better option in terms of the wide receivers from Jacksonville. If you look at just in the overall rankings on here, there's kind of a mishmash in terms of what to take. So for me, I could possibly go with a quarterback here, but I tend to like to wait a little bit on my quarterbacks. We are in the 7th round, and so just because of how much is there's probably going to be a run on quarterbacks soon. In terms of the tight ends, Vance McDonald, David Njoku, Eric Ebron, Austin Hooper. I'm liking Austin Hooper for this year, and considering he's the fact that he's the tight end 11, I think we can wait another round before having to take him. And so for me, I like the upside of Marvin Jones. I'm not expecting him to be like a huge contributor, but as a bench player, bye-week fill-in, possible flex play, based on the matchup, I'm not against that. I still think that he has solid rapport with Matthew Stafford. And so for me, I'm probably looking at Marvin Jones, to be completely honest. Again, being the wide receiver, pro wide receiver guy that I am, that's probably not a surprise to many of you. So that's where I would go with this one. Let me look. Tevin Coleman. I'm just not sure what to think of the backfield for the San Francisco 49ers and how all that's going to work out. They've got so many guys back there. I think that there's a little more security, a little higher floor with Marvin Jones, and so that's where I'm going to go. All right, so after I took Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard, Larry Fitzgerald, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Miller, Eric Ebron, Curtis Samuel, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, so a little bit of a run on the quarterbacks. Jameis Winston was taken. Cortland Sutton, Latavius Murray, N'Keal Harry, Geronimo Allison, Miles Sanders, Tevin Coleman, and Jordan Howard. So what we have right now, in terms of quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, Drew Brees. In terms of running backs, here we go. Austin Eckler, Rashad Penny, Royce Freeman, Darrell Henderson, LaShawn McCoy. Wide receivers, D.D. Westbrook, Kiki Kuti, Anthony Miller, Deshaun Jackson. Now, I'm okay to miss out on D.D. Westbrook. I like the fact that Austin Eckler is right there. Again, I like to wait a little bit on quarterbacks. I'm surprised that Ben Roethlisberger right now is ranked number 14. He's a guy I'd be willing to wait for. Drew Brees, even with not passing as much, still finished as the quarterback, I want to say 8 or 9 last season. Jared Goff finishes the quarterback 8 last season. And right now he's ranked number 10. And with all the weapons he has, I'm still fine to wait a little bit on him. So while it says, draft Russell Wilson right now, I'm actually going to remove him for this round. I'm going to remove Carson Wentz also because he's not the guy that I necessarily want. Put in Austin Eckler, D.D. Westbrook. So right now, Rashad Penny, D.D. Westbrook, Austin Eckler are the guys that it would suggest. Vance McDonald, David Njoku, Austin Hooper still available there. So I'm still willing to wait a little bit there. So, Rashad Penny, Austin Eckler, I think that Austin Eckler right now, because of the upside with the fact that if they move Melvin Gordon, Eckler is going to be the main recipient for PPR purposes. So he is a guy that I would definitely be willing to take here. D.D. Westbrook, again, I think he has the highest ceiling of the wide receivers in Jacksonville. But again, there's some question marks there. So I'm willing to go right now, Austin Eckler, and grab a little bit more security because even if Melvin Gordon comes back, Eckler will still have a role and still provided low-end RB2 numbers last season. So I'm going to take Austin Eckler. So after I took Eckler, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, D.D. Westbrook, Kiki Kuti, Golden Tate, and Royce Freeman are gone. So we still have a quarterback, Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, who I'm hesitant on, Ben Roethlisberger. At running back, Darrell Henderson, LaShawn McCoy, Matt Breida, Ronald Jones. At wide receiver, Anthony Miller, Deshaun Jackson, who I think is a good, solid pickup, this year to be kind of that late-round flyer. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Devin Funchess, Michael Gallup. And we still have the same tight ends going at Vance McDonald, David Njoku, and Austin Hooper. So right now we're in the 9th round. The team so far is Alvin Kamara, Chris Carson, Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, Tyler Lockett, James White, and on the bench we've got Marvin Jones and Austin Eckler. Again, doing our best to keep stacking on wide receiver and running back as much as possible because there's value that can be found in tight end and quarterback later. So that's why I'm, again, still willing to wait on those positions. Darrell Henderson is interesting. I know that for the most part they've been talking about how Mac Brown is most likely the number 2 guy in LA still. And we're still unsure about how severe Todd Gurley's injury is. LaShawn McCoy, I'm not so sure about him, even though they're saying that he is the guy. You still have Devin Singletary, who's been showing a lot in camp. So he's the guy that I'm kind of watching as a later round guy. Matt Breida, again, there's too many questions around that San Francisco offense in terms of the running backs. Ronald Jones, I'm not touching. Adrian Peterson, Deion Lewis. So of the guys here, I like Rashad Penny. I know I already have Chris Carson. I know that this would kind of be a handcuff, and if with some of Carson's injury history, it might not be a bad idea to take a handcuff. I'm willing to just move on from that and take someone else with some upside. I'm honestly looking at either Anthony Miller or Deshaun Jackson. I think Deshaun Jackson's the more proven person. Although their ADPs are a lot lower than where I am at right now in terms of the draft, where we're at overall pick 100, and those guys are going a little bit later than that. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, while he's ranked lower, he typically goes ahead of those guys in terms of where he's at in the ADP. I think for me, I like the upside of Deshaun Jackson. Again, I think you could also go Darrell Henderson. That's kind of a who would you rather go with? It's who do you think has the higher upside at this point in round 9. So for me, I think I'm going to go Deshaun Jackson. And then from about there on out, I'll have 2 more bench spots. Quarterback and tight end. At that point, I'm definitely looking quarterback in round 10. Round 10 and 11, I'll be looking at quarterback and trying to find value in terms of tight end. But I'm trying to stack up as much of the wide receiver and running back talent as possible right now. So for me, I think I'd probably go. I'm gonna go Darrell Henderson. I'm gonna go Darrell Henderson just because I'm not necessarily wanting to draft. A backup. Oh, see, and that's what happened. Should have looked at that. So after I took Darrell Henderson, Chicago Bears, Rashad Penny, then Devin Singletary got pulled. Should have known that. Even though he's ranked low in terms of ADP, he is moving up draft boards. And that was just a guy that, in the 9th round, once you're getting down there, that's a guy that he's getting first-team reps. Definitely something to look at. Then Marquez Valdez-Scantling, DK Metcalf, Matt Breida, LaShawn McCoy, Emmanuel Sanders, Anthony Miller, Dion Lewis, Peyton Barber, James Washington, Deshaun Jackson, Devin Funchess, Austin Hooper, and then Paris Campbell. So where we are at right now in terms of running backs, Ronald Jones, Adrian Peterson, Kalen Ballage, Naheem Hines, wide receivers, Michael Gallup, Dante Moncrief, John Brown, Deshaun Hamilton. Quarterbacks, so we still have Carson Wentz, Drew Brees, and Kyler Murray. I believe my team, let me look at the draft board here. I believe I am the only team to not draft a quarterback yet. No, there's one other team that has not drafted a quarterback. They've taken 2 tight ends, but no quarterback. So I have a little bit of leeway here in terms of taking a quarterback. And then I've also got Vance McDonald, David Njoku, and Trey Burton available, as well as Delaney Walker available at tight end. At this point, I am willing to wait one more round on tight end and go ahead and take a quarterback here. Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, Ben Roethlisberger. I still like Drew Brees. I still think he is a viable quarterback to finish in the top 10. Even with the fact they've focused more on the run game, the fact their main running back is still Alvin Kamara, who catches a lot of passes. You've got Michael Thomas there. They've added a legitimate tight end threat in Jared Cook. I think there's enough there to still. I would prefer to have Drew Brees over Carson Wentz. So we'll go ahead and take Drew Brees. So after Drew Brees went Kalen Ballage, Michael Gallup, Kareem Hunt, Traquan Smith, John Brown, and then David Njoku. So Vance McDonald is considered the number 1 tight end to take right now based on the rankings. There's also Trey Burton, Delaney Walker, Jack Doyle, Mark Andrews, Jordan Reed, who people are saying that he's kind of the star of the Washington practices and training camps right now. There are guys that are available that just kind of looking that have some upside but aren't necessarily guys that I'd necessarily want. I think that Vance McDonald definitely could have a good season this year. With Jesse James out, I think that he's now the tight end to own there. And so I'm willing to take him here in the 11th round as my tight end. And then after this it's just finding diamonds in the rough. So after I took Vance McDonald, there's Tyrell Williams, Adrian Peterson, Ronald Jones, Dante Moncrief, the Rams defense, Naheem Hines, Carlos Hyde, Deshaun Hamilton, Delaney Walker, Trey Burton, Mark Andrews, A.J. Brown, T.J. Hawkinson, Devontae Parker, Kyler Murray, and Mecole Hardman. So now we're looking at, now that we've got our quarterback and our tight end, we have 2 more bench spots and then defense and kicker. I'm not even going to go through defense and kicker, to be completely honest. I'm just going to go through 2 more picks in terms of just finding players that could possibly jump out. Jalen Samuels, I see as one, is the handcuff to James Conner. He's a guy to look at. Right now, the suggestions for me from Fantasy Pros is to take quarterbacks. I am not taking quarterback once I have one. In a one quarterback league, you only need one. Over the last few years, about 40 quarterbacks a year put up at least one QB 1 week. So it is a very streamable position when only 12 quarterbacks are being played at a time. So you only need one quarterback until there's an injury. Then you can, if you need to from that point, you can be streaming quarterbacks. So right now we want to look at upside, and at this point it is not a problem to look farther down the depth chart or the cheat sheet of running backs and wide receivers to see guys that you think are going to put up decent numbers. Guys you think it could really have a breakout season. From what I'm seeing right now, Jerick McKinnon, Ito Smith, Damian Harris, Duke Johnson, Jalen Samuels, I think Chris Thompson, C.J. Anderson, Justin Jackson. I've already got Austin Eckler, so I don't need Justin Jackson. I do kind of like Justice Hill, but I think Jalen Samuels, with how much they've been saying he will have a role in this offense, I think he is the guy I kind of like the more. So I think I'm going to go with Jalen Samuels and have that be my pick. And then, so it gives me 3 running backs and a wide receiver on my bench. Looking at who is there, Kenny Stills, Jameson Crowder, Albert Wilson, a lot of Miami guys down here at the bottom. Mohamed Sanu, Marquise Goodwin, Quincy and Nunwa. There's not a whole lot that I like this low. I mean, to be completely honest, right now it's just it's a lot of just roll the dice. I don't like how Jameson Crowder hasn't been able to stay healthy. I don't think Marquise Goodwin is going to do much in San Francisco. Mohamed Sanu he's okay. Deebo Samuel, there's a whole lot of young talent there. We just don't know how they're going to be used. Kenny Stills may be the quote-unquote safe pick, just because I know that he is a guy that does a lot of deep routes, and so he is a guy that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be throwing deep to a lot if he is a starting quarterback. So, and again, like I said, just in terms of the running backs, there's a lot of guys here. You know what? Maybe we go Malcolm Brown. I already took Darrell Henderson, so I won't take Malcolm Brown. I think personally, right here, just add a wide receiver. I'll probably go Kenny Stills. Just to add that extra wide receiver. That way I've got 2 wide receivers on the bench, 3 running backs on the bench, and then from there we just go to the defense and kickers. Do not take defense or kickers earlier than your last 2 picks, unless your league happens to have skewed defensive scoring, which I played in a league did that, and I always, I tended to take defenses late, and it kind of threw things off a little bit. So if that's the case, fine. Maybe take a defense a little bit earlier. But if you're just doing standard scoring where 10 points is a good week from a defense, wait until the end to take your defense. So, all right. And then so I'll just here take a kicker or take a defense, and then just take whoever kicker it suggests. Call that good. And hey, my draft grade was an A. So projected standings. No, never mind. We'll take that. I didn't sign in, so it didn't have that for me. So, all right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Going through that. Fantasy Pros seem to like what I did, so hope you guys enjoyed that. We will be doing more of these throughout the coming weeks, and so we will kind of move around in terms of team amount of teams in a league and where we draft. Today was the 5th position in a 12 or the 4th position in a 12-team draft and half-point PPR. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Hey, SkullKing Nation! Thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.